Hello and welcome to this new edition of Business Africa. My name is Asha Sampath and we're glad to bring to you this magazine dedicated to the continent's business and economic news. And as usual, you can win $150 in our Business Africa game. More details later, but first, today's top stories. Easy and convenient mobile payment has become very attractive for many African users.
Basically, it's an electronic wallet that enables our clients to carry out a range of operations simply and safely.
The rose business in East Africa, it's the bet of Ethiopia who wants to compete with its Kenyan neighbor.
This industry is driving market. So all the time we are checking the price in the clock and the direct market.
African honey to compete with the big world producers. Burkina Faso has embarked on this sticky enterprise.
Nous travaillons également sur l'acteur principal même.
We're also working with the key players, namely the bees themselves, to select the best colonies with the highest yields.
The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the use of electronic wallets in Africa. Since the beginnings of Safaricom in Kenya in 2007, millions of Africans have already used their smartphones to pay their bills. The crisis is accentuating the trend. Authorities in several countries are now making payments through mobile money platforms. Western Union, one of the continent's historic money transfer players, is adapting to this rising trend. Take a look.
I use Tigo Cash to make money transfers. Usually I pay money into my Tigo Cash account and can then send money to family or friends. I can also get money transfers via Western Union.
According to a recent study, like Fatou Sen, more than 100 million Africans, that's 12% of the continent's total population, use the mobile money system. Worldwide, the rate is a mere 2%. In the footsteps of East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, the payment system is now spreading to West Africa. Here in Senegal, 2 years after it was launched, Tigo Cash already has double-digit growth. With a very low rate of penetration by traditional banking services, Digital Cash provides a simple, easy-to-use system whose time has come.
Basically, it's an electronic wallet that enables our clients to carry out a range of operations simply and safely.
And therein lies the key to the system's runaway success. You no longer have to waste hours queuing to pay electricity or water bills with a bag full of banknotes. With the system installed on your cell phone and money in your account, away you go. Tigo also has its own solution for paying into your mobile account.
Thanks to our partnership with Western Union, customers can now pay money into their Tigo Cash account. So it all makes life a lot easier. Subscribers can make purchases and payments by mobile phone.
All in all, the future prospects for mobile money look rosy indeed. The decision by Western Union, the world's #1 money transfer system, to make mobile money one of its strategic priorities speaks for itself.
We are today enjoying a relationship with approximately 13 mobile network partners around the globe. The majority of those are in Africa, because as you know, Africa is experiencing a very high usage of mobile phones, but more importantly, mobile phone as a payment solutions across the different countries.
Mobile money has almost unlimited use for both individuals, public services, and companies alike. It can be used to pay salaries. Governments can also pay out pensions and study grants. In the Ivory Coast, the system processes over 10 million euros each day. And in Mali, transactions are the equivalent of 20% of GDP. And the digital money mania doesn't stop there.
Social media is a platform that we've started, we've pioneered, I should say, in China, essentially, with the likes of WeChat. We've also done a partnership with Viber. This is a unique proposition by which we enable customers who are already users of this platform to be in a position to send or receive a transaction. It is started. We're very pleased with the partnerships we've launched. We will continue to ensure that we can deploy these solutions across the globe and in Africa as well.
Just as the continent bridged its telecommunications gap thanks to the mobile phone, the ever-expanding range of digital money services available via cell phone has heralded a mini-revolution in the lives of many Africans and has actually established Africa in the forefront, ahead of so-called developed nations.
As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to progress in Africa, several countries such as South Africa, Nigeria, and even Algeria are experiencing a significant number of infections. In Central Africa, Cameroon, which has exceeded the 10,000 reported cases, has been singled out by the World Health Organization as one of the hotbeds of infection. I asked our correspondent in Yaoundé, Aboubakar Munchili, what's the current situation there. First of all, Aboubakar, why is Cameroon so affected and what is the authorities' strategy?
There are many reasons. Among other things, Cameroon has notably lagged behind in making strong decisions over such things as monitoring and the systematic closing of its borders. At the beginning of the pandemic, we witnessed several episodes of irresponsible behavior, and especially by certain potentially infected travelers from Europe who were quarantined, but unfortunately then chose to flee the quarantine locations and be reunited with their families. In other words, within the community at large, which sort of complicated things and helped to quickly propagate the virus. Naturally, there is the compulsory wearing of masks in public places, but that's not always respected. Faced with all these difficulties, the government isn't sitting idly by. The authorities have adjusted their response plan, which today is based on local awareness, free distribution of hand sanitizers, masks, and many other useful tools in the fight against COVID-19 in Cameroon.
There is very little information on the spread of the pandemic in Central African states. Do we know a little more, especially about the detection of COVID-19 cases in the region?
What's certain is that the cataclysm forecast in Africa by WHO, the World Health Organization, has not happened, at least for the moment. It's been a little more than 4 months that the virus has been present in Africa. And contrary to what we have seen elsewhere, the fact remains that many countries on the continent do have a lot of difficulties carrying out large-scale tests, problems with kits, and a serious lack of appropriate laboratories. Also, there's a problem of patient traceability in a certain number of countries, and of course the lack of statistics. As a result, many doubt the figures published by the authorities in many countries and claim they are probably way off the mark. Many repercussions seen in Cameroon already.
What are the first economic and financial outcomes of the crisis in Cameroon?
There have been many repercussions seen in Cameroon already. According to studies published some time ago by the National Institute of Statistics, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted and considerably degraded life of almost 60% of people here, and the state has also lost more than 800 billion CFA francs. Cameroon has been forced to re-evaluate and adjust its budget.
Thank you, Aboubakar Munchili, for this brief overview on the COVID situation in Cameroon. And precisely around 50 demonstrators marched in Johannesburg against the clinical trials of a COVID vaccine on 2,000 volunteers. It was launched by the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg and the University of Oxford. The South African participation is intended to provide the continent with affordable access to the future vaccine. For its part, the University of Lomé in Togo announced that in September it will start to test on humans molecules from the traditional pharmacopoeia to find a cure for COVID-19. The effects of the pandemic continue to have a very negative impact on the horticultural industry in East Africa. In Kenya, the sector loses $930,000 per day. This is a serious blow in a country where horticulture generated $1.3 billion last year, mainly thanks to the cultivation of roses. This success has inspired its Ethiopian neighbour and hence prompting the country to enter this growing market. This is a report by Ariski Ben Mokhtar and François Baudry.
Will Ethiopia's future be built on flowers? The government's bid to make horticulture a main source of income appears to have succeeded. Ethiopia has now joined the select club of flower exporters, with over $300 million in revenue in 2010. It will soon overtake Kenya and become Africa's leading exporter. The secret of success: competitive costs and a wonderful climate.
Actually, the demand side of the market is growing by about 4% every single year. Then there is also markets that are dying in Europe that cannot compete with Ethiopia and other flower-producing countries. So if you can see in Holland, Israel, France, Italy, then the producers of those countries are dying or moving to the less costly production places.
The reality is that foreign investors, French, Dutch, Germans, Israelis, Indians and Chinese, have descended on the rich Ethiopian soil that is perfect for growing different types of flowers all year long. Even the Japanese market, untouched by the Kenyans, is now blooming with a variety of flowers from Ethiopia. The country is a new El Dorado. The government bet on flowers for a miracle. Thousands of acres can be leased at low cost. Half the existing flower farms are owned by foreign companies. Local investors are also part of the trend, like Adugna Bekele, who switched from driving a taxi to cultivating roses with the help of a government subsidy.
This industry is driving market. So all the time we are checking the price in the clock and the direct market, and they are checking the variety also, if it is convenient for Ethiopian climate or not. If the market is suitable and the price is good, we'll plant it.
50,000 flowers a day are collected. That's 1.5 million a month. Exports go almost exclusively to developed countries. Young women make up the majority of the workforce. They get only 50 euro cents per day, but it's better than not having a job.
We're not well paid, but it's okay. Anyway, I've no other choice. I had no work before.
The work involves removing the dried out petals and damaged leaves.
Flower producers have to strictly respect the ecological, social and health standards set by the European Union to satisfy an ever more demanding European customer who wants to know the origin of the flowers and that the environment has been respected.
If it is, for instance, a class 1 chemical, the greenhouse has to be closed for 24 hours. Then imagine during or around Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas or Easter, which are, which constitute the bulk of the flower market.
The consumer is interested in fairly and environmentally safe products. We have tried to adapt a code of practice that every farmer complies to. We start from the simplest and the most important ones, which are the local laws.
The environment is therefore a real concern, but difficult to control in the field. The coordinator for the environmental issues remains optimistic.
Every person would like to sustain health, to sustain prosperity, to sustain, economic development. But this sustainability of economic development cannot be materialized as long as you are not really serious about social and environmental issues.
So far, only half of the assigned thousands of hectares are being used to grow flowers. The potential for growth is huge. Ethiopia's future looks rosy. But who is it that really benefits? Is it the foreign investors hoping to build large fortunes, or the Ethiopians hoping to improve their quality of life?
You're on Business Africa, welcome back. According to a Fitch rating, the indebtedness of sub-Saharan African states will increase sharply in 2020, and much more than in other emerging economies. It's the African oil producers such as Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon and Nigeria who could be the most affected by the drop in black oil prices. I'm joined by Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, former head of economics at the University of Lagos, to explain this dilemma facing Nigeria. Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, thank you for joining us on Business Africa to talk about the economic situation in Nigeria. Well, with an unprecedented plunge in oil prices and a growing external debt, should we be worried by the situation in Nigeria?
I think it is worrying for Nigeria. The main source of foreign exchange for Nigeria is oil. And when you have a fall in the price of this main source of foreign exchange for the country, it is quite worrying because, based on this COVID-19 pandemic, the price of oil has actually gone down drastically. And we can see that the country has borrowed extensively to finance this year's budget. And it is quite worrisome because it has a lot of implications for debt service. And in this year's budget, we have about 2.95 trillion or 3 trillion provided for as debt service payment. So it's a very serious problem for Nigeria to pay so much as debt service because we don't realize so much money from oil.
What is the Nigerian government's strategy?
Well, with the fall in the price of oil, which like I said, is a major challenge for Nigeria, what government has done now is borrowing. In the past 12 months, the National Assembly has approved about $28 billion as debt for the government. And it's quite worrisome that within a space of 1 year with this current National Assembly, we've had about 28 billion borrowed.
But are there other options? The
other option that Nigeria ought to have done is to cut the cost of governance. Instead of having the same 10.5 or 10.8 trillion as budget, what we should have done is to cut the size of the budget to something like 9 or 8 billion, so that there won't be need to borrow to fill up the gap. So if your income has fallen as a country when the price of oil has gone down, what you should have done is to actually cut down your expenditure. But to maintain your expenditure at the same level, and then you now borrow. Borrowing is not free money. Borrowing has implications for debt service.
Thank you, Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma. Africa continues to progress against illicit financial flows. According to the Africa 2020 Tax Transparency Report, requests for information exchange sent by African tax administrations have increased in recent years, to the point that 8 African countries have secured $189 million in additional revenue between 2014 and 2019. The automatic exchange of information has already enabled Nigeria and South Africa to recover $378 million through voluntary disclosure programs. Well, at least some encouraging news for all cancer patients. Thanks to an agreement with pharmaceutical companies, 20 leading cancer treatments will be available in sub-Saharan Africa. 27 different types of cancer are targeted, and among them the agreement ensures chemotherapy treatments for breast, cervical and prostate cancer that are the most deadly in Africa. Patients are expected to save an average of 59% on drugs purchased under these agreements. It's very popular all over the world, and yet its production is stagnating. Honey is the first victim of the spraying of insecticides and herbicides or of climate change. Its consumption, more popular than ever in the United States and Europe, is dependent on imports, a juicy market dominated by China, but in which Africa is carving out a piece of the cake by entering into the game, like here in Burkina Faso. Take a look.
Honey is one of the most sought-after products on international markets. Faced with growing demand, more and more Africans are trying their hand at beekeeping. In Burkina Faso, as elsewhere on the continent, honey production is a traditional activity common to almost every household in rural areas. In the villages, production is a low-input activity. The bees don't need feeding or taken care of, and no extra supplements are required. The only investment is the hive.
In a good season, we can make $200. When it hasn't rained too much, it's more like $100 a year. I've been producing honey for 15 years, and I've not been able to school my children and even feed my family when harvests are not enough.
The country produces around 500 tons of honey each year. Although, as the sector is not clearly structured, this is an estimated figure. Locally based organizations are busy persuading people to modernize their activities. In Zinarié, the Wendiam Federation has distributed almost 2,000 modern hives among the region's beekeepers. This NGO makes sure producers obtain better rates by treating the wild honey they collect. With a supplementary process, the honey can be sold directly to supermarkets in major cities.
At the
production center, we buy the untreated honey for $1.50. However, the local producers can make just $1, and often as little as 50 or 60 cents. So you see, we've been able to increase their earnings by as much as 50%. We are encouraging boutiques and supermarkets in Ouagadougou to sell our products. We also have orders locally from private individuals, as well as private orders from international clients in Belgium.
Mais actuellement, c'est au stade vraiment d'une consommation privée à leur niveau.
The international market has huge potential. If African countries such as Burkina Faso are going to reap the full benefit, they must first professionalize sectors that are struggling to satisfy demand for large orders. Furthermore, they will also need to respect strict quality controls to obtain the much coveted seal of approval from the European Union, their principal client.
For
honey production, there is a list of residues that have to be monitored, as we cannot exceed certain limits. Our samples must not contain too high a level of pesticide or chemicals used in production. Certain chemicals, such as antibiotics and antimicrobe medicines, are totally outlawed in Europe. So this must also apply to honey imported from Burkina. It is up to the relevant authorities in the country to draw up a program to monitor these residues. Unfortunately, there is no such program. Until a certified label is established, local projects to process honey are catering for demand from the Burkinabés. Jacques Koidima, an engineering technologist, has become a specialist in honey production. He now has his own agroecological farm in Ningdougou, in the east of the country.
Nous ne faisons pas seulement que produire.
We're not just producing, we're working transversely to develop production techniques and tools, improving hives and equipment.
Nous travaillons également sur l'acteur principal même.
We're also working with the key players. namely the bees themselves, to select the best colonies with the highest yields.
Nous avons, par exemple, beaucoup utilisé le miel et ses dérivés dans.
We are using honey and its derivatives to produce cosmetics, soap, pomades, cream, and lotions, as well as pharmaceutical solutions.
Les crèmes, les laits, etc., ainsi que certaines solutions pharmaceutiques.
Aware of the sector's vast potential, the public authorities have decided to promote what is known as non-timber forest products, namely products such as nuts, berries, and honey. The main challenge they have to face is to halt deforestation caused by forest fires as well as excessive use of weed killers and pesticides. There are also plans to devote huge areas of land to the cultivation of honey plants. The sooner such plans are put into action, the better. Western beekeepers watch helplessly as honey production is affected by dwindling bee populations, decimated by air pollution and the use of chemical fertilizers. Africa stands to gain from getting busy with its bees.
It's now time to reward our loyal viewers of Business Africa. It's up to you to answer to the following questions. If you're drawn among those who have given the correct answers, you will win $150. This is game number 528. So listen carefully to the two questions that follow, and good luck. First question. In which countries is Africa #1 in cut flowers? Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa. Second question. How much honey is produced in Burkina Faso per year? 500 tons, 15 tons, 350 tons. You know the answers. You can participate now by going to our Facebook page, Business Africa. Answer the questions by sending us a message, and good luck. And of course, don't forget to include your contact details, name, address, telephone, email, and the number of the game you are entering with the answers, of course. This game, for example, is game number 528. The winner will receive $150 as our winner this week. Congratulations, you gave the correct answers to our game number 524. Here are the details. First question. How many tons of pineapple can be produced on 1 hectare? Answer: 5 tons. Second question. What is the turnover of ethnic cosmetics in France? Answer: 50 million euros. Well, folks, that's it. Business Africa is over for today. I'll see you next week, same time, same channel with Initiative Africa. We will talk to George Rubello Pinto Chikoti, new Secretary General of the OEACP, the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. In the meantime, you can catch this show on our Facebook, Vimeo and YouTube channels, and follow us on our new Twitter account @AfricaShows, and feel free to share, like and comment using the hashtag BusinessAfricaTVShow. Until next week, keep safe and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.